Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a subscriber who is from Louisiana. He would like to share some of his cryptid canine and paranormal canine encounters with us. Before we get into this man's interview, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those audiobooks are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Briefly, before we start the interview, the subscriber had been emailing me for a while. We've been trying to get this interview together. He owns a cleaning company with his wife, and today was pretty much the one day that we could get to do the interview. And so there is a little background noise, not too much. Just wanted to give you a heads up on it. But it is one hell of a terrifying encounter. All right, everybody. Today I have a subscriber who reached out to me. His name is J-Cat. J-Cat's from Louisiana. J-Cat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Jeff, and you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for reaching out to me. You've had some stuff that's been happening in your area of Louisiana. You and I have talked for a little bit. I know what's been going on. You want to share that with everybody first, but then you've got some other stuff that you've experienced in Louisiana as well. So we're kind of going to combine everything into one, a Dogman encounter, some paranormal stuff. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and you can start the show with what's been going on recently.
Alrighty, my name is J-Cat, everybody. Just a couple of days ago, we experienced a few things around our home we've been experiencing for a while now, with the, rotting smells, from when we come out the door. And the other night, I was going out to get trash, and I had my two small dogs with me, and my dog growled and looked the other way, and I, turned around, because normally when they growl, they're normally growling at a cat or something that's around, it's most normal dogs. But she went berserk and took off running towards the camper door and literally ran her head into the door. And when I turned and looked as my other dog was barking, I see a dark figure. It was really tall. It actually was. I guarantee you, the way I could see it, it was around 7'1", 7'2". It was actually a very tall figure. And, I went back in to tell my wife what was going on, and my wife was kind of freaking out. And I told her, I said, well, I got to still go get the trash can. So I grabbed my pistol.
Right.
I don't want to be, I'm not scared of anything, but this actually scared me very bad. So I grabbed my pistol and I go out to get the trash. Well, my wife said whenever I was walking out to get the trash that the camper started shaking. And, and I forgot to say that the figure did kind of disappear.
Okay.
I didn't see it after that. It did walk off,
right.
Fast, very fast. So
now,
I don't understand why it would be shaking the camper.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you came out of the camper, you were walking out to the trash. Where was it in relation to the camper?
So when you're standing out when you're looking out my camper door, to the left side is the road, by the road, towards it actually, And then the right side is behind my parents' trailer, and they got a little bit of woods back there. And, it's a lot of vegetation that needs to be, taken care of. And that's where it was on side of a pump shed. There was a pump shed back there, and the pump shed is literally 10 foot high.
Okay.
So this kind of scales to where I could see exactly. I don't know if maybe it was bending down, but it looked around about 7'1", 7'2".
Okay, so you were using the pump shed as like a reference point for height.
Basically.
Okay.
And what I'll do for you, Jeff, coming up is I'll take pictures of the pump shed and everything and show you exactly. And I'll stand on side of it and have my wife take a picture, and I'll hold my hand about where, I seen the figure's top of its head.
Okay.
Because I stand 5'9".
All right.
So I can reach over 6 foot, and it'll be scaled above that.
Right. And to answer your question, I mean, I think possibly these creatures, whatever it is, Dogman, Sasquatch, they enjoy, scaring human beings. I don't know if it's a sense of humor or what, but they have a tendency of scaring humans. So maybe that's why it decided to shake the camper. You did notice some smells around that time too, you said.
Yes, it kind of had like this rotting carcass smell.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like a dead animal that's been bloated in the sun on the side of the road, and you pop it, you're gonna get a bad smell out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it almost gagged me. That's how bad it was.
Right.
I mean, and I don't gag easily, because I do a lot of hunting and stuff like that,
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely something. Is there anything else that's been going on in your area of that nature?
Well, I mean, besides last year, around last year, they had that loud roar that I heard that one time.
Okay.
It ever since after the hurricane, we've had a lot of things, like we were back home right after the hurricane, and I thought it was somebody, messing around in the woods by the house.
Okay.
And I went out there with my gun, and because you could hear them right outside the camper window, walking through the woods, and it was really loud. Even my wife heard the noise. And it just didn't sound like an animal. I said, somebody's out there, and at that time, in hurricanes, there's a lot of looters, that went on with, Katrina and Rita. Rita, I mean, you don't want someone to come and think you're not home and try to break in your home, or either try to break in your home when you have your small child there.
Right.
And so I went out there, and, I went out to the left of the camper, out the front door, and the way the road goes is we live in the beginning of a subdivision. Then they got a little, road that runs on the side of it. So I went around the corner on the back side of the property that was against the road. And there's, thick vegetation. The hurricane knocked a bunch of trees over in through there. So I heard the noise, and then I hollered. I said, hey, if you're planning on coming to mess around here, you're badly mistaken. And I did rack it around into my pistol.
Right.
And it stopped. I said, your best bet is to get on out of here. And whatever it was did take off running. It did. And I never seen it come out the woods anywhere. It just kept running and running and running. And, in the way the little... it separates the road from the house's property. It's probably maybe about 13 foot wide of the little bit of woods, It's kind of like a barrier for everybody's property, towards the road that runs on the side of it. So it ran all the way behind all the houses, and there's like 4 houses after ours, and then it goes to the boat launch where there's swamp, and the river runs through and everything else. So, there's plenty of time for it to get away really quick back there, because once it gets past a certain point, there's no more home.
Right.
It's just straight woods and, swamp.
Yeah, that's
so
crazy.
That
So
was the second part,
now, you've had a lot of, we talked about this, and while talking to you, you had mentioned the first two, and then we talked about, you had some very interesting paranormal encounters, but these paranormal encounters, uh, they all kind of have a dog canine feel to them. So I kind of would like you to share a couple of those with us. The one I'm interested in is you told me about a kid who disappeared and then came back or was found. He was lost or something. You want to
yeah.
go into that real quick?
So his name is Jackie Parker. He's around my parents' age, which my parents are in their 60s, their mid-60s. Well, about 100 acres of, farming land and a lot of woods in there and stuff. So he was out playing in the woods one day, and I guess he went too far, for, his parents' liking and ended up getting lost. So he was explaining to me that when he got lost, they could not find him until the very next day. And he was, what I understand, at least about 6 miles into the woods. That's a lot of coverage for, a child that's maybe 9 years old, 8 years old.
Yeah.
That's about the age he was at when this happened.
Especially in
And
Louisiana, because you've got swamps, you've got thick.
exactly.
Yeah.
And, and the population of coyotes that are out there in Topsy are very, very populated. It's a very populated area for coyotes. And, well, he was telling this mom and him that they found him inside of a coyote den that was in the ground, a hole in the ground. And he was so pale white when they found him. And he drew what he saw that night. And the thing he drew, Jeff, I swear, it looked exactly like an upright canine with a long, long, long snout. And he said all it would do was pace back and forth in front of him and would just look at him and eyeball every single time. And he said it would make a growling noise. And like a kind of a, moaning noise.
Right.
And it shook him so bad that, when they did find him, he had to seek therapy. For as long as he wouldn't talk.
Yeah.
And I mean, that right there, that has to really take a toll on a person.
Yeah.
And when he did open up to me, I was probably about 14 years old, because my uncle lived next door. And, I used to go eat the mulberries. I used to love climbing up in a mulberry tree and eating the mulberries, and he would always be out there.
Right.
And he was like, "You want to see some of my artwork?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I mean, I was really interested because the man could draw.
Right.
And he ended up telling me, after a little while, he opened up to me, so "You want to see what I saw when I was young, when I got lost?"
Did he tell you about the experience of being lost?
Well, see, that's where, I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he was like, "As a child, I got lost." And he told me, he said, "I got lost in the woods for a whole night." And he said, "And this is what I seen." And Jeff, when he pulled this picture out that he drew, it made my skin crawl. He told me, he said it would pace back and forth and eyeball him. He said it had dark eyes. Never said nothing about, a lot of people say, "Oh, amber eyes and this and that." He said it had pitch black eyes.
Okay.
And he said it would just pace back and forth and just growl at him and breathe. And then he said after a little while, it left off. And, and his dad and him, whenever they did, I forgot to mention this to you, whenever they did find him, the tracks that they did see were bigger than the normal dogs. They were.
Right.
Because my uncle, God rest his soul, my Uncle Ricky told me, he said, this is no lie. He said, the tracks we saw, he said, we thought it was big old giant wolves. He said, because it was an abandoned hole. So that tells you right there, that may have been somewhere he was feeding.
Yeah. Yep.
That animal could have been feeding,
Now, he just walk, he didn't, because I was curious, like, did he share, hey, I just, like, did he share how he got lost, or was this creature, did he just get to the den and then all of a sudden this creature just showed up there, or?
Well, he told me whenever he was walking in the woods, he was looking around, and, doing normal kid stuff, playing in the woods with, hitting sticks on the trees and stuff, And he said he was just going for a walk, basically, and he loved to play in the woods. And he said that before he knew it, he was in somewhere that he wasn't familiar with. So he tried to turn back around and go back home and end up not getting back home. He said he don't know where he went. And it took them, it took dogs from their house. They have hog dogs, and the dogs love, all the kids.
Right.
And these dogs are actually the ones that helped them find him. There was a search party for him and everything. There was people looking all over, all the neighbors. And the dogs actually are the ones that, because they trade, curs down here for hogs, and them old bloodhounds, and they actually are the ones that found him. If, my uncle said if it wouldn't have been for the dogs, they would have never found him.
Wow.
He just told me the animal just showed up out of nowhere and was just pacing back and forth. I don't know if maybe it was looking for, if it was feeding there, it was getting coyotes and taking them, that may have been its way of eating, a quick meal. And then it seen him there, and it just like, what is this, in here? Why are you in here? And he said it would just eyeball him and just kind of growl and breathe real hard. And he said after a little bit, it just turned off and just took off running. And he, the picture, I wish I could get out of this picture because I would show you exactly what it looked like. It was the way it was standing up. It had hawks. Like a dog. It was bent backwards. And,
right.
And the wrists were slightly curled down with, dangling hands. And he said that the fur was real thick around the shoulder and neck area.
All right. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean,
that's almost like one of those, missing persons, the quote unquote missing 411. Luckily he was found, but that right there kind of leads me to think that, hey, there is cryptid involvement in a lot of these disappearances that are happening. So, yeah.
And that's the whole thing, Jeff, is a lot of people, 411, it's just a person being goofy and they went off tread. They ain't seen nothing, they were just scared. A lot of these people see things that are unexplainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, this guy was so sincere. He had tears in his eyes when he was telling me this.
Yeah, and he was older than you. He was in his 50s or 60s at that time when he was sharing this?
No, he was actually probably in his late 40s at that time. Now he's in his mid 60s to late 60s.
Wow, so
I was around 14, 15 when that happened.
Yeah, it's a traumatic event for someone. That's wow.
And my uncle, God, like I said, God rest his soul. He told me, he said his brother never opens up to no one. And I mean, I'd always go over there and say, hey, Jackie, and we'd go eat mulberries and everything else. And I mean, for him to just come out and tell me this one day, it was just crazy.
Yeah.
And my mouth just dropped when this man come out with this. I was just like, wow. Just, makes your skin crawl,
Yeah, it
when you
does.
see
It
a
does.
picture like that, and you just, it made me lose words. I was stuttering.
Yeah, I mean, well, was this where he was lost? Was that around where you were at the time?
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah,
Where,
yeah. You're 14, 15 years old. You're hearing a story about something that lives right around that area.
exactly.
I'd imagine it'd scare you very badly. Definitely crazy. Now you've
And
had some,
I've been chased by coyotes,
yeah,
and they only chase you like whenever we would go rabbit hunting. They would chase us, when we had dead rabbits because they wanted the rabbits. So that's how I knew. Even if you got into a coyote's den, Jeff, they're gonna run off. You know,
yeah,
they'll more than likely run off. Unless they have pups around. It's a female with pups.
right, right, yeah. With
And
like
but
any
what he
animal, like any
described, it
animal.
was just
Speaking of that, you just made me remember something that we were talking about. Is in the beginning, what's been going around your house lately? You've had
mhm,
deer coming into your yard, which is very unusual.
yes.
And then we were talking about, something's pushing the deer into your yard because I mean you've lived in that area for quite a while now.
15 years.
And how many times have you had deer in your yard? Up
Never.
until now, right? So,
Up until now.
and I
And even my wife said the same thing. My wife, she's been around for 7 years now, and she's never seen a deer nowhere near my yard. And all of a sudden, I have a doe, and I'm outside now, Jeff, standing there, and this doe has not ran off yet or her fawn.
hmm,
And then they slowly, gradually walked off.
right, right. Like I
And
said the
that's
other night,
crazy.
like and you just said too. I agreed with you when we talked earlier. Something with the hurricanes, after these hurricanes, shit gets stirred up.
Mm-hmm.
After Katrina, after Rita, after Hurricane
Laura,
Michael, and they're just they hit.
because Laura just hit us, what, 8 months ago?
Yeah,
9 months ago?
yeah,
And it hit us hard. It hit, believe it or not, it hit us harder than Rita and Katrina did. I mean, it did. It destroyed Lake Charles really bad.
hmm.
And put a lot of people out of homes.
Yeah.
And there's still people out of homes.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Now you've had paranormal stuff happen out in Louisiana. But
Yes,
is
sir.
that the last of the cryptid stuff that you've encountered or seen or heard?
Well, the only other one is, whenever I was a young boy, I was around, it was around 1994, I think it was. And my older brother's only 45, so he was, in his teens at that time, and I was probably around 11, no, about 12 or 13.
Okay.
That's right. And we used to, in Louisiana, we rabbit hunt.
Right.
I mean, that's how we are. We love it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we do it at night, which is, it's not really too good, but we do it at night because it's a lot easier to spot a rabbit. Well, so we're walking. There's this hunting club out here called Kenny Gully. And, it leads, it's got a little creek that runs through it, and it runs behind some houses, but where we're at, it's quite a few hundred acres of, raw woods, that you got to slip in between branches just to get through it. And I mean, the rabbits, they like to forage up in that thick vegetation. And, and it's easier for them to stay away from a predator.
Okay.
So we were walking, and I had a 22 rifle. My cousin had his shotgun, and my brother had another 22 rifle. And we were rabbit hunting. We had already killed one. And we were going through to catch, old jack rabbits are, they're pretty big rabbits, And Well, my cousin says, "What is that?" And my brother's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Way over there." He said, "What is that in between the trees?" He said, "Is that, somebody playing a joke or something? There's somebody out here?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And we looked, and, the flashlights weren't strong enough to actually capture exactly everything.
Mm-hmm.
But from what we can see, it was fur. And my brother was like, "Oh, that ain't no bear." But, Jeff, the bears out here are maybe 250, 300 pounds, and they're very rare to see. Very rare.
Yeah.
And they don't stand, almost 8 foot tall. I'm sorry.
Right.
That would be a dang grizzly bear.
Yeah, and bears don't stand for an extended period of time either. It's not something that they like to do.
And this thing was blacker than black, Jeff. I'm talking about blacker than black. And you knew it was there. And it was in between a bunch of little, like, sapling trees, the little swamp trees. And there was a bunch of them right there, which is, it's hard to, you got to move around through trees and stuff with your shoulders, back and forth, bobbing and weaving, to get through these areas. And then it starts to kind of clear out further up. And I guess where we ran into this thing at may have been its territory, somewhere where it sits up. Because, don't they like, being inside of rural, thick areas sometimes?
I'd imagine just from everything that I've heard and, they like being around water and thick woods, just places to hide. Yeah, so.
Yeah, and it's real moist out there, and there's a creek that runs right there.
Right.
All the way through, because it's called Kenny Gully Hunting Club. They call it a gully, but it's a creek.
Right.
A gully's maybe 4 foot deep and, 5, 6 foot wide. This one's like 15 foot deep and probably about 30 foot, 40 foot wide. So that's considered a creek.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so there's water. There's obviously hunting ability for them to catch prey and stuff. So yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a deer and hog lease. And we're known for that out here as hog lease, especially, deer and hog lease. Like your alligator lease, we got alligator lease out here.
Right.
And that's, because we're in the heart of Louisiana, you got a lot of swamps and stuff around that you got to go through, and I played in them as a small child, and it can get pretty thick in places, but when you're, the age I am now, if I try to go out there, I'd probably die from trying to catch breath, but
right.
I used to run through there all the time, and that night we seen that thing. My cousin's like, "Y'all backed up very slow." He said, "I don't know what the heck that is." He said, "But we're getting out of here." And it really did. It scared everybody. It did.
Yeah.
What were we going to do with a couple of 22s and a little, 20 gauge shotgun?
Yeah, not much against something that big from what you're describing.
Make them pretty mad.
Yeah. So you've had some family paranormal stuff that has happened as well.
Yes.
You want to touch on a little bit of that?
Well, back then, my parents, became big Christians, non-denomination basically, full gospel, anything, that was in, mixed in, a little bit of Catholic, and we had a big barn behind the house. That's where a lot of our preachers around here, their churches started out in our barn, believe it or not.
Okay.
And my mom sang gospel music. I remember as a child, we'd go to different churches and my mom would sing and everything. And, my dad would share the Bible, and, well, my sister kind of was a bad girl in a way, I've been messing with, which is, I think that's what brought this all on, is her, we found a Ouija board at one time.
Yeah.
And tried to burn it, and it wouldn't burn. But, my sister and them would mess with it. And I think that's actually probably what brung this on. It could have,
Okay.
Or it could not have, and it just could have been something that was around. Well, we're having a big revival, and we were all, playing with a bunch of kids outside and everything and running around the property. We own 5 acres. And, well, something just kept telling me, I need to go check on my sister, because she ain't been outside at all, and the last time I had seen her, she was listening to her radio and everything, and she was upstairs, and, and if you ever been inside of a log cabin, Jeff, A-frame exactly, they have 20-something foot ceilings, because it's 2-story.
Right.
So in your top stories, your ceilings can range up to 10 to 14 foot, depending on how the piece was made and how far down they made the flooring to, a log cabin inside the upstairs room. Well, I walk up there, and my brother comes running in. He's like, yeah, let's go check on her, blah, 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 And, well, it was me, him, and a guy named Dennis. That was my brother's best friend. They were together everywhere. And so what happens is, as soon as we enter the door, my sister is literally feet in the air. Something had her by her throat. Like, had her by her throat. Up in the air. I mean, her face was turning, it literally was turning a bluish color. And I mean, and I was told that they can hurt you, but they can't kill you. And whenever I seen this, Jeff, I didn't know what to think. I was confused.
Right.
So I took off running and hollered for my dad. And there were several members of this church that witnessed this, and even a preacher witnessed this, because when my dad got up there, he grabbed my sister by her feet, and they're in the stairwell, and my sister is at least a good 5 to 6 foot floating in the air, kind of like almost like an incline with a stairwell where you walk up it.
Okay.
Kind of even like that in the air. Like, when somebody's on top, you're carrying something up the stairs, somebody's standing, carrying up top, and you're on bottom, and it's at that angle.
Right.
That's how she was. But levitating 5 to 6 foot off the ground to where my dad's arms were stretched way up. And he fought and fought. And finally, he rebuked it in the name of Jesus, and it let go. Well, they finally get my sister downstairs and get her all calmed down. And you can literally, I wish phones would have been a big thing back then, because I would have taken pictures. You can literally see the impressions on her neck. You could. It had perfect handprints on her neck.
Right.
That you can actually see impressions. So she's sitting down there inside the I didn't get to finish the rest of the story with you earlier. She's sitting down there inside the living room, and and my dad, my mom's caring for her and everything, and my sister's just shaking, and she's like, it had me, Mama, it had me. And she said, what? And before my sister can explain again, it grabbed her again by the throat and was squeezing, because I seen her eyes bulge. Like, if you squeeze something, like you got them little toys that you squeeze and their eyes start bulging.
Yep.
Like the little kid toys. It was kind of like that. But her eyes wasn't coming out of her head, but you can tell she's being squeezed.
Right.
Like if you grab somebody by the neck, you can tell when you're squeezing them and hurting them. And you can literally see the sides of her neck, like seriously, impressions pressing in, all the way around to the back side of her neck. It was like you take something, just squeeze it small. It was crazy. So my dad and his preacher rebukes it again, and finally it lets my sister go again. So after a while, everything calms down. People's in there praying and everything, and it's all calming down. Well, my dad's like, I told my dad, I said, Dad, I said, the angel's got a Ouija board inside of her room. And he said, do what? Because that Ouija board was there. It's the one we tried to burn. Remember I was saying we tried to burn one?
Right.
That was the one. Well, so my dad goes and gets this thing and everything and does whatever with it. Well, my brother's playing around, making his muscles. Yeah, I don't want to mess with me inside one of the little, women's Muriel things with the light around it. And then all of a sudden, he just lets out a big scream. A terrifying one, too, and he punches this Muriel thing and breaks it. And my dad said, what's wrong? And he said, I just saw something that looked like a werewolf. And he's like, what do you mean? He said, in the mirror. He said it looked like a wolf. And he was just freaking out. And he said, I've never experienced something like that in my life.
Right.
And I told him, and I asked my sister, and my sister said the same thing. That it was like, you hear all these stories about hellhounds.
Right.
And like I said, I have a cousin that experienced that, that some kind of weird animals, that it was unexplainable. And that could be another, part of your show,
Yeah.
Well, I'll try to get a hold of him.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that. But so your brother, essentially, and we had talked about this when you had mentioned your cousin's experience. And I said, yeah, you've got all of these different canine cryptid or paranormal cryptid or paranormal canines that are seen near cemeteries. Dogman has been seen near cemeteries. Usually they like to hang out there. Your cousin's encounter happened in a cemetery?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were. Okay, so my cousin was at our family cemetery. It's called La Blue Cemetery. And they were listening to music and everything, they just started drinking. They were thinking about doing some fishing because it's called the English Bayou that runs through there.
Okay.
Well, it's pretty far off the road. It's a couple miles into the woods, They only have like one caretaker around that stays, several hundred yards up the road, and he comes out every once in a while and checks on nobody digging up graves and stuff, which you have a lot of that around.
Right.
So they're out there and they're jamming and everything, and he said that he heard a bunch of voices. So he told my cousin, he was like, turn it down. And my cousin like cranking up competitions and everything, and for my cousin Ronnie to hear the noise over my other cousin's stereo, he had 9 15-inch subwoofers in there. So imagine, he's probably running about 40,000 watts. For him to hear some talking and hooting over that's pretty loud.
Yeah, yeah.
So that kind of makes me think that, paranormal can get through anything. They actually can. They can come over the radio you're listening to, and I really think that's what was happening. Is, they were probably talking over the talking through that radio.
Right.
Well, he said that he looks in the rearview mirror and sees something on all fours standing there, and this is how he explained it, Jeff. He said it had no tail. It was a solid gray. He said it had every leg was like a man's arms, built arms, with hands on them, with hands and fingers.
Okay.
On all 4 legs. He said the eyes were beady like a black doll's eyes. He said the ears were super sharp, and he said the butt rounded and it didn't have no tail. He said that all these other ones were making all kinds of noises and everything else, hooting, yipping and everything. And he said this one big one steps forward and says, "Shut up." Just like that. Plain language. Shut up. And they got real quiet. So tell me, how does that happen?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, and my
definitely
cousin,
strange.
he lives up in Boston now. He actually drew the picture of it. You know, I mean, he's a pretty good drawer like the other guy was. And he drew a picture of this thing, and it was really crazy looking. Like, it had the chest of a man. But all 4 limbs were arms. Like a built man's arms.
Wow.
I mean, have you ever heard of anything like that?
No, I have not.
I mean, when he told me this, I was just like, wow. You know, I mean, what is that?
Could have been a hellhound, or, you know, I'm not.
And the thing about it is, you know what they were listening to? Hell's Bells by AC/DC.
Yeah. Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's all we were, you know, when we were younger, that's all he listened to was like Ozzy Osbourne and all them, you know, Black Sabbath, the whole 9 yards. That's all he listened to.
Right.
You know, and I mean, it was pretty crazy, but, you know, the whole thing of it is, Jeff, is to come to find out, I did not know that my cousin, you know, the one that, you know, Ronnie, was into devil worshiping. I never knew that. You know, and that's what I wanted to tell you earlier. You know, we got deep into conversation about things, you know, and you know, it's kind of mind blowing how you can see things, and then, you know, and the second part of it is, Jeff, is after they tore out of there in my cousin's custom car.
Yeah.
He sees it the next day, because they used to have a trailer in our backyard, because we had 5 acres, remember, with the A-frame log cabin.
Yep.
He sees it outside of his window in our very backyard. Yeah. The next day, in the evening time.
Now, did he describe?
You know, when this all occurred, it was in the evening time.
Right. Did he describe the face or anything?
He said the face kind of reminded him of like a pit bull, kind of.
Okay.
And the face kind of boxy looking.
Yeah.
But just real muscular built looking.
Yeah.
You know, he said it was just massive. He said on all 4 limbs, he said this thing was over 6 foot.
Yeah, that is massive.
It was just ginormous.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge.
It's that. What do we not know about what goes on? You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do we not know that's out there?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand. You know, people sit there and they laugh at me sometimes, and they're like, "Man, I used to have people come up, tell me some of your stories." You know, and I'm like, "Where did you hear that from?" And they were like, "You know, a real good friend of yours said he loved listening to, you know, all the stuff that you had happen in your life." I said, "Well, they're not stories.
Right.
They're things that happen.
They're actual experiences, yeah.
Yeah," I told him, I said, "That's an actual experience. That ain't no story. That's not like I went over there and made all this up. You know, if nobody believes me on what I tell you, you know, I mean, that's on them.
Yeah,
you know, I know the truth."
Yeah, absolutely. And
you know,
Louisiana is a very strange state to begin with, you know, and that's what, when you were talking to me about everything prior to the interview and starting it, I was like, you know, you've got some cryptid encounters, and you've got some very strange canine paranormal encounters, and I was like, this has got to be told, you know. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing this with us. I'm coming up on recording time. I don't want you to hang up, but is there anything that you'd like to tell the audience before we end the interview?
Everybody, I really appreciate y'all listening to Jeff. Jeff is a really straight up guy. you know, and my encounters that I come with, which is there will be more that I will be telling Jeff about. Listen to this man. He really knows what he's talking about. He really does. And he's a very sincere guy, and he takes the time to really listen to you. So I really appreciate you, Jeff, for having me on with my encounters, and I, look forward to sharing more with you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I just have a platform. That's all I have, guys. So don't hang up. I'm going to end the interview now, and then we'll talk for a few minutes before we say goodnight. So thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. I just want to let everyone know that was he was at work. He owns a cleaning service, and he does not have a lot of free time. I wanted to get that interview with him, and he wanted to get it out. So he was in the middle of work. So if the noise was really bad, I apologize. I'd like to try to get him back on and maybe do a different interview when it was, less quiet. But he needed to get some of that crap off his chest. He'd actually been emailing me a couple of times now and wanting to talk about it. The connection is very strange, though, when you think about the cryptid canine and the paranormal canine, the hellhound, the whatever the heck it was that his cousin saw. And it almost makes you wonder, is the Dogman supernatural paranormal, or is it flesh and blood? And it's all theory, but it's all very, very strange. And I think that's what makes it so interesting and so terrifying in the same sense, But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And with that, I want to bid you all farewell and see ya!